Now, starters, I'd like to see if, oops, sorry. Okay. Is the type size big enough for everybody? Okay, I'm not hearing no's. And I should say, I can't always see the chat when I'm talking, so please feel free to interrupt me. Tim can see it, and if for some reason anyone needs me to make the type a bit larger, go ahead and ping us. So for starters, we're going to be talking today in the second section about data wrangling with dplyr and tidyr. And working with these particular libraries, the kind of questions you're going to, in fact, I have the questions probably further down on the Etherpad, but the kind of questions we're going to be asking and answering is, how do I get, select specific rows and columns from a single data frame? How do you combine a bunch of commands into a single command to make your scripts more readable? And how do you create new columns, remove existing ones? How to reformat your data frame? And then lastly, and not in the list, how do you, write your new data out? So that's a lot of what we're going to work on today. In the previous lesson, and I should check the line number, we talked about setting up your folders and creating some directories. And I am assuming, let me rearrange these up. You should have something that looks like, if you look on the screen over here in my lower right, you're going to have a data folder, data output, dplyr figure, and maybe fig output. And so if you don't have those, how you create them would be this particular code. And this is just a review of what we did last week. And I'm assuming, or I want to check this, has everyone downloaded the data? If there's any questions about that, the line I highlighted was downloading the interview information, or the interview data set. So, and the other thing that was done last week was talking about how to install R packages. And the two packages we're going to install and use, or we are installing and using, are the tidyverse and something called here. Now, tidyverse, it's actually a package containing other R packages, and I've got some information you'll find in the Etherpad, but it includes dplyr, which is great for creating a lot of common data wrangling tasks. Oh, I'm going to pause. Christian, you're the other helper. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I was here the last couple of times. Apologies, I had some Zoom issues.
We're glad you're here.
Yep. My name is Christian. I'm a software developer with the library. And I'll be also a carpentry instructor, and I'll be teaching next week about graphing and data visualization and helping out today. So thank you. Okay.
And the other package that's included in the tidyverse is tidyr, and that's a package for reshaping data and plotting and other things. Plotting is going to happen next week, which Christian's teaching, and a lot of what we're doing today is how do you prep and mangle your data so it's ready to make really interesting charts. Now, I know we covered this last week. That's the code if you need it to load up your libraries, especially the tidyverse. And is everybody kind of up to this place where you've got your interviews data set loaded? Well,
who hasn't? There's one person. There's a couple, like if you have it, has everybody got it set up? Actually, the better question is who doesn't have it set up?
Yeah, I should get the line on.
And if you weren't here last week, you might not have any of this, so we can.
That's why I included this. Like it starts about line 73, and that part, like setting up everything from the last workshop, I put in on line 67 going on down in the Etherpad. We have the code, you'll see, to load the libraries, to create the interviews data frame, and just, that was basically where we left. Oh, Lee, I'm sorry, there's another helper who's here, Lee Fan. If you want to introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, Jamie.
No, that's okay. I want to make sure everybody knows who the helpers are.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lee Fan, and I'm part of the Data Science Center as well. I'm going to add the star to my name, so feel free to ask any of us if you need any assistance.
Yeah. And again, break in if you got a question. If I'm going too fast, anything, this is not a formal thing. So we're going to talk about, we're going to inspect your data and look at it with dplyr. And I have a list here, and I'm going to actually get the line number for you. If you look around line 184, I've listed the dplyr functions we're going to be going through. Okay, and also above that, I listed the functions we used last week, because some of these are going to come up again. So everything you need is either for this week or for last week. It's going to be the beginning of this Etherpad. And I'm going to switch over to live coding, so you get to see my typos. Okay, so are we all kind of up to this place? Is there anyone who doesn't have the data loaded or the libraries loaded?
Jamie, I don't know if it'd be helpful if you show them how to run the
Absolutely.
run the code that
Sure.
for people who weren't.
Okay.
Here.
I'm going
Like
to
create the directory folders.
Yeah. I've already created
I
them.
know
but-
it's going to throw an error, but just in
okay.
case. So we need to, yeah.
Okay. You can either run a single line or all three. The command, the key combination to run this, it's really close to Python, so occasionally I hit the wrong one. But for R, to run a command is Control Enter, and it's going to say it already exists. So that's running a single line. You can also, I'm going to highlight, you can also run 3 lines, same thing, and I'll get 3 errors. So
and just Jamie, not to interject, but
Yeah.
if those folders didn't exist, they would populate them on the right side where files is. So,
lower right down here.
Yeah,
Let me make this a bit larger. I've got more stuff in the folder than you guys may have, but don't worry about that. Now, downloading the file. This particular code, I've already downloaded it, but I am going to run this again. Now, the one problem some people had was if for some reason I think it was if your desktop is somehow remote, you may have a trouble. But but we're making the assumption that you've got a that you have this download file, that it's okay. Here we go. I'm sorry, that it's going to go into the data file. This is assuming you're in the data file, so it should be downloaded there, in which case it would look like this. Okay. Now you got all that. The next thing we're going to run is, and how do you install the packages? Like I told you, we talked about the tidyverse, and here is just a package that sometimes comes in handy for finding things or searching on your machine, on your workstation. So I'm going to run the 2 installs. Now, move this up here. In my case, I've already got them, so it might look different for you. Don't worry about this message. This is just, it's okay. Just say yes in this case. And restarting R, it won't be that noticeable. It's just gonna see, you're just gonna see this little, that little icon flipping around, and everything will still be here. Another way to both install, I'm gonna do this while it's running, to install and load your packages. If you were to come over here to the package on the lower right, the packages tab, you can see there's something that says install, and you could actually look for tidyverse. And that's one way to install it. And I forget what it stands for, but our repositories usually have CRAN in the name, and somebody else who remembers it, they're welcome to correct me on that. So that's one way to install them. The other way and we're going to get to loading a package, is you just look down here. Where's tidyverse? Tidy. You look down here, and if it is loaded, this should be checked. And if you look at the bottom, that's the when you check that, you see that command saying library tidyverse. Slide down. checking this over here is the same as running it from here. This is load. You install and then you load a library. So I am going to run these. I'm going to load these two libraries. And okay, so let's sort of check. Is everybody here with the libraries loaded and the data downloaded? If I don't, now the other thing, and I think we started last week, is we are going to create a data frame, which you need to, rather you're going to take your raw data and you're going to put it in this thing called a data frame, and that's how you're going to work on your data. Now when you're working on a data frame, you're not touching your original data, so that's sort of safe, and it's not going to be in any way mangled by what we do. So we're going to call our data frame interviews, and we're going to use one of the functions in the R package. I think it's tidyr, read CSV. And what this is doing, this is where here comes in. It basically makes it easier to find. So we're gonna load in our data and from the folder data, and this is the CSV file. And missing data or something called NA is going to be labeled null. Okay. I'm going to let me find an example of that for you. I've already loaded it and I'm trying to find someplace where it says null so I can show you that. Okay. Now this one here, NA, this is where there's either nothing or there's null data. So let me go back here and I am going to run this command. I should actually drop this one. Well, out. Yes, I'm going to remove this, so we're going to run it again right now. Okay. So you can see down here, it's interviews. That's the command. The script we ran. It shows up down here in the console. And it'll start telling you a little bit about the data you've just loaded into a data frame. And if you look on your upper right, interviews, again, there's a lot of information about the data frame. You have your column names, you have, what type of data is it, and the other information like that. If you want to look at it in a nice kind of spreadsheet format, there's a couple ways to do it. One is the view command. And the view command is kind of odd because it's easy to make a mistake. I do this all the time. It's capital VIEW and then the name of the frame. And that's the same thing as if you were on the right, in this upper right. If I double click on interviews, does the same thing. One thing you're going to find in R, there's at least 2 or 3 ways to do everything. So at this point, we've got a data frame. Now, is anybody not got their interviews data frame loaded? Okay, if I don't hear anything, I'll keep going. If you wanted to just look at interviews, all you have to do is just type the word interviews, which is the name of the data frame, and hit enter. But that's gonna probably have too much, as they say, too much information. So now we're going to look at some ways to inspect the data with dplyr. And I have listed the functions we're going to go over. If there's people like me I'm an old admin and I'm used to databases. So if you've ever seen a SQL or even any kind of database, you'd see things like select, filter. Some of this may seem familiar. It doesn't matter if you've never done that. But that might sound, some of these kinds of concepts may be familiar if you've used a database. Select enables you to select columns in your frame because your data frame looks like this. This is sort of a pretty version of it and easy to read. So select enables you to select specific columns. Filter lets you subset or select rows based on some kind of condition. I'm going to go through each one, but I just want to tell you what we're going to hit in advance. Mutate is, that's a great one. It's like you can create new columns by using information or doing math on existing columns. Arrange is sorting. I don't know why it's not called sort, but arrange is sort. And count is you get discrete values, and you'll see how useful that is as when we get to that one. So again, from last week, I know we talked about dimension. Let's say you get a brand new data set, somebody throws it on your desk, you've never seen it before. The data set we're using today is, you can almost eyeball the entire thing, but it's not uncommon to get a really large data set. So you're trying to figure out, what is the size of this thing? Now, I'm going to come down here. If you want to clear your screen, by the way, in R console, Control L. So I just want to know how many rows and columns are in the data set. So num and the data frame, the data frame is the command. I'm going to run that. You can see you've got 131 rows and you've got the 14 columns. If you only wanted to know rows, it's n num row, not nums, it's num. And the same thing for columns, n column. So you can see the size of your data set, kind of figure out what are you working with. And the couple other useful commands, head and tail give you the beginning and the end of your data set. Because again, if it's a brand new one, you've never seen it, you're not sure what are you working with. So the first is the head, and interviews shows there's an ID, there are village names, interviews, how many, I'm going to switch over to how many how many members are living in a particular house, how many years have they been living there, different types of and different demographic information. And it's the same with tail. Tail shows you the bottom end of your data frame. Another extremely useful one, I'm going to clear the screen, is names. If you're going to select column names, you got to know the column names. Now, in the best of all possible worlds, somebody has provided you with fabulous documentation. But that doesn't always happen. So you want to know, how do I find the column names? And this will tell you, you've got, a key, the village, and like, this is no meals. This is actually number of meals. And this is a good one because there's some real life typos you're going to run into that over here. Number of members. And I cannot tell you when I was practicing how many times I misspelled that one, but that's actually good. This is good practice because in the real world, you may have iffy documentation. You may have strangely named, column names, because at the time, there may be restrictions on how they could code the column names. They maybe had how many characters, so they may look like that. Now, okay, so this is part of the review, the review section we've got here. And now I'm going to get into how do you select columns. So the syntax is fortunately select. And you're going to start with the name of your data frame, which here is interviews. And what's nice is you can see, I hope you can see here, R starts to finish finish whatever I'm typing, because that saves a lot of typos. So you can select your columns individually or what's called a range. So individually means, and again, I have them right, I have all the column lists down here. I could say I want village and number members. Let's see, number of meals. So this they don't have to be they don't have to be consecutive. You could have every other one. So I'm going to run that. And oops, no. Okay. This is my great example. This is the one I'm always misspelling. Let's see, copy. N-O. Yeah. No meals. Let's see if it's got it this time. Okay, oops. Let's see. Oh, okay. Number of members. I promise you that'll get misspelled. Okay, so I'm saying I'm selecting only out of the interviews frame, only these 3 columns. And this is not saving it anywhere. This is only displaying it. At this point, should you at any point, and again, I think this would have been covered last week. If you ever want to create, say, a subset that will remain in memory, you can say, let's see, I'm gonna call this village info. And so so the new data frame I'm making, the subset will be called village info. And I'm gonna use the assignment character. Anybody want to tell me what the assignment character is? Oh, and I realize I can't see chat, so that's not going to help, but
Sabrina said less than dash.
okay, less than dash, correct. And I think that it was mentioned last week that equals will work, but the convention is the assignment character, and it helps to stick with the convention, because then other R programmers immediately are going to, you know, recognize that. So I'm going to take this subset, and as you can see on the upper right screen, village info is now a subset of interviews. Okay. And you can do that at any time. The handy thing is, say, with this select command, is that you can try out different kind of iterations, different ways to view it. And when you got one you're happy with, save that. The other good thing about working in an R script is that you're saving all your commands. So you can kind of go back, fix things, and, you know, go back maybe and
Hey,
make
Jamie?
yes.
Sorry, could you make the script side bigger?
Yes.
Yeah, it feels constrained. All
Okay,
right.
here, let me open this up a bit. How's that?
Well, I meant like just the frames I could read.
Oh, okay, let me.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's
There you go.
good.
Perfect.
Okay. Now, besides listing individually, if you want to list a range of columns, and I'm going to pull this back up. See, you could say you want the second to the fifth column. You could say select, and select command in the brackets there. You're going to say interviews. That's your data frame. And you could say village and a semicolon. That's the range symbol. And then you want to go all the way down to, I'm going to go to respondent wall type. Okay. So it's gonna select out that range of columns. So again, you know, you can get this smaller subset. Now, besides this, you can use numbers. I mean, this isn't that important, but should you want to get a range, you can say select data frame again, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, 2 to 6. So you'll say the index of the second column to the 6th column. This is just another way to do it. I actually personally prefer to type the column names because I find that easier to tell what I did if I go back and look at it. Okay, here got my so we've gotten the range. The next thing, so you can pull out these you can get out a subsection of your frame, but that's the columns. So you want to now be able to subset maybe rows, and rows we're using filter. So filter will let you're filtering on some kind of variable. Now, for example, what I'm going to type is we're going to do filter. And again, it's interviews as the data frame. And I am going to filter on a specific village name. So it's going to be village and equals. This is, it's not the same as the equal sign. If you look in Python, if you see that, you know, you use a single equal sign to say a variable contains this. This is actually testing. This is testing that you want you want the rows where village will equal CHIROTZO. Okay, so you want to only pull out the rows where the village equals that. Okay, so you know that's pretty straightforward. So now, if you want to start to mix things, yes, you can use conditions of and or. And if you've done like a Python class, maybe even Excel, you know that and means you have to have both things, or means, well, I can have this or I can have this. In other words, and might be I have to have the village of Chirodzo and the village of Gode. They have to have, I have to have both of those. Or you can say I want this village or that village. Okay, so I'm going to first add a filter for this. So we're filtering for this particular village. And if you want to add things, the part in parentheses, I'm going to come over here. Now, there's a couple of ways you can type this. You can make something in a big long line. However, some people find that a bit hard to read for everybody else who looks at your code. So you can actually do your comma. That's your first, your first requirement. And you see it's going to come in here already indented. And I'm going to say I want rooms. Rooms is going to be greater than 1, meaning I want to have hang on, I'm going to pull up the interviews. Now, at some point over here, it will tell you in your data set how many rooms. Okay, this is number of meals, and I know number of rooms. There is a rooms category. So how many rooms in there where this person's living? So we want to say this family is living rooms greater than 1, and I'm going to do something else. So I'm going to say comma. And number of meals, it's not no meals, is greater than 2 meals a day. Okay, so now we've got, and that could be one big long line, but something like this, something like this is both readable, and the handy thing is you could actually put some documentation in your code. And as you learned from last week, the pound sign is just a comment. So I could say comment. And I could say over here, number of rooms. And this doesn't impact running the code. It's readable, and you can remember what you did. Because, okay, everyone says this, believe me, I can come back in 3 weeks and I don't know what I did. Or why I did it. So I like to leave notes to myself. And you're also leaving notes to your coworkers. You're making your data more reproducible, all those good things. So I'm going to run this. And so this is going to list, how many members in the family, how many years they live there, and it's pulling out only the villages that match these criteria. So this is just a whole list on there. Now, okay, so I want to add and. I mean, this is making this is just saying I have to have all of these. And okay, and is this comma or, I mean, not and or, literally, to make an and statement, I'm sorry, this is coming out a little fuzzy. You can use the comma or the and symbol, the ampersand. And this goes back to what I've said. You can do things a bunch of ways. Just decide what is the most readable thing for you. So this is essentially going to give us the same thing, but it's real obvious we're doing an and because it's got the ampersand. So now we're going to do an or. So I'm going to do another filter. And our data frame interviews. Okay, and I am going to filter for 2 different villages. Okay, we're going to say village and equals CHIROTC. Okay, I'm not going to embarrass myself by trying to pronounce them. Okay. Different languages have different ways to code an or. When you're going to say this village or that village, you're going to have to literally type out village equals, okay? And the OR symbol is on your keyboard. Should be on mine. It's an upper right. Looks like the line. That is going to be your OR symbol. And I'll say village equals, oops, 2 equals, and RUA. So we're testing our data frame for 2 different villages. It could be this village or that village. And again, got to write out the whole thing. You can't just say village equals Chirozzo or sign Ruaka. You actually have to write out the whole test. Okay. So again, you can see you've got both of these too. So that is filter. Now, you can both select and filter. And this is what we're going to do. When we're discussing putting 2 things together, the concept of filtering and selecting, we're going to use something called pipes. Now, you may or may not be familiar with this. The way to think of a pipe is you do one operation and you get output. Well, you can actually take the output of one operation and send it to another operation and then to another operation. So I'm going to do something I normally don't do, which is cut and paste, which just goes against our live coding. So hang on just for a second. So let's say I want to both select and filter, and I'm not using pipes or anything. So what I'm going to do, and this is probably, you can't do this, but this is probably not the way you want to do it. So first I pull out, I filter for the village, and I make a sub file, and then I take that sub file and next I select the rows. So I'm doing this in 2 things with intermediate files, and it works, but you're also loading up your code with extra steps. But okay. Now the other thing you can do is you can what they call nest functions. Okay. Now this way, you're getting this last sub frame, and you're saying you first go, I'm selecting and I'm filtering, and by putting first filter over here, getting that first one, and then selecting the wall type, yes, it works. It works just fine, but it's actually a little hard to read. And we want something, and you want to make your code really readable. So what we're going to do instead here, and this is the last time I'm going to cut and paste because I actually like the live code. Okay. So a couple things here. Okay. So this is going to be an example of, okay, piping. Okay. And this is a pipe symbol. You might other languages of pipe symbols. This one is Control, Shift, and M. So essentially, I am saying I want to if I just want to see interviews, I type interviews. And there's your output, all the stuff coming out. So I'm taking all that output from interviews. I'm going to filter for a village. And if I only run this part to here, and I'm selecting the part I want to run and doing a Control Enter. So it gives me, so it's filtering for those. And then I take this output, this down here, and I'm going to send that output to select. And we're selecting a wall type. And so we have this. So you can see you've got one step without having to make intermediate files or really convoluted nested code. All of them will work, but the question is, what do you find the most readable? And in this version over here, I'm just saving this particular select into interviews filter. When you see, anytime you think, okay, I like my selection, it's working perfectly, then you can save it. So does that make sense? I mean, are people comfortable with the notion of piping? Okay. second. So we're gonna
Jamie, you
do-
might want to go over the pipe symbol.
Yes,
Maybe you can type one out like what
Yeah.
you did.
okay, it's,
And because there's a shortcut for it too.
yeah. Now, if you just type it out, which I do when I forget the key combination, it is %, greater than, you're pointing to the, pointing to your right, and %. The key combination is, oops, Shift or Control Shift M. And it's one of those ones I periodically forget it, so it's on a post-it near my machine, and that will give you that pipe symbol. Okay. Now I want to do an exercise with what we've covered up to now. And where to go? I gotta go find where that line is. Okay, we've done filter. Okay, exercise 1 is on 190, is line 194. Take a look at that, and oops, I'm just making these comments so they stop making little red marks at me. So let me move out of this for a second, and I'm going to switch over to the, where's my, okay. Okay, exercise 1, we're going to is making a subset. We're going to do this just, we're not going to break into breakout rooms. We're going to have, everybody's just going to work on this. And what we're going to do is you're going to use pipes, and I'd like you to subset the interviews data frame to include only the interviews where the respondents were members of an irrigation association. And this is the variable, member association, and retain only the columns that select only these columns. Now, if you have questions, please, come up and ask them. And then when people come up with a solution, just copy it in there, and then we will go over the whole thing. Okay. So, any questions, or do you want to just go ahead and do this now?
Jamie, I think it would be helpful maybe just sort of describe the starting point and then the ending point. So essentially, you want to perform these operations and then put the result
Into the
in a new data frame.
Which would, okay, so we're gonna first of all take our data frame, and we're going to subset it. So we want to include the interviews where the respondents were here. Let me go pull up my copy of this again. Hold on, I'm going to go back here. There's probably a better way to go back and forth, but obviously I'm not remembering this. Okay, so I'm going to look at the interviews again. So it's larger. Okay, so we're going to look for everybody. We're going to look for interviews, and we're going to look for people who are members of association. Now, member of association means it's yes in this column. So we're going to, first of all, filter our interviews data frame for member association equals yes. We want to, yes, they're a member of an association. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, we're going to select, some specific columns. We're going to select affect conflicts, and affect conflicts, and the other one, there's a list of them, live count, which means how many people are living there, and then the number of meals, and number of meals. So those are the things you're going to, and let me go back to that. Those are the that's the data you're going to be sorting for. Sorry to bounce back and forth like this. Okay, and as you can see from some of the examples here, first you're gonna, and you don't have to save it as a subset. You can just view it. You know, you're gonna look for a particular, you're gonna look for that. First of all, you're gonna filter it and then select. Is that, how does that, people okay with that?
Maybe we can try it out for a
Yeah.
few minutes and then we'll all come back together and look at it together.
Yeah, about 5:30, why don't you work on it for about 10 minutes? And we like to give people a break at the hour break. So after we look at it, we're gonna, come back, look at what people have, and then we're gonna take a 10-minute break where you can stand up and stretch or go grab coffee or whatever.
Jamie,
Okay.
maybe you could share your RStudio and like
Yeah.
get them started.
Okay, let me go back to that. Share screen. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to here. And, okay, so for starters, I'm looking for interviews. So if I just do interviews, it gives me everything. So I'm taking that output of interviews, and I want to pipe it through some other function. So I'm doing Control-Shift-M. When I hit enter, it knows that this is not, I'm working on something, and it's going to give me a indentation, or I could just keep going on one big long line. So the next thing, I'm gonna filter, and let's see if I can do this without a typo. I want to see who's in a member association. This is associations of people who are in an irrigation association. So MEMB. So it pops up with this, which definitely saves me from myself. And I want to say that equals. So we're testing to see this result. We're not saying it's going to equal something. We're saying, does it? This is kind of like saying, does it equal this? And I want to say yes, because we want to say yes, they're in a homeowner association. So are we good up to there?
Thank you,
Okay.
Jamie. I think that's
Sure. And just to get everybody started, I'm going to do Control-Shift-N. So let's see what the next step would be. You've got your output, by the way, is going to give you at this point. Oh, wait. So let's just say this. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? I should have put an extra, that's my mistake. I should have a close paren right here. So anybody caught my mistake? Good. So if I only run this part, I hit Control Enter. You can see down here, let's see, what have we got? Oh, and it doesn't, okay, let's see what I did wrong on that. Hang on a second. You can see over here, it gave me 0. So let's see. Oh, okay, this is what the mistake is. You see over here? The member association is lowercase yes, and I put in here a capital Y. So let's try this again. This is just the first part of this. So that's the output of filtering. So what the next part you want to see if you can take a stab at is selecting some specific columns, and they're listed online. The columns you want to look for, they're listed online.
I pasted them into the chat too.
Thank you. Okay.
So
the next
columns
part,
you want to retain only the columns affected conflict, live count, and no meals, no number of meals.
Yeah. Let's see what we get. We're getting pasting in it all. And so when anybody wants to just paste in your code.
Who needs more time? Oh, Kevin did, if you look in your chat,
Oh,
Jamie.
okay, let's see.
Michelle
Oops.
did too.
Yeah, where's this? Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yes, okay, that's exactly right. You could actually, again, you could list the 3 columns, or yes, you guys, that's really good. That is the using indexing. So yes, those are both correct. And again, you can make a subset and then use it for a chart, or you can just, like this. This is good when you want to say, okay, what does my output look like? Because the first time I did that, I got 0 because of my typo. And oh, exercise. I'm looking at the wrong place. Never mind. Okay. Let me look. Did they paste it? I'm sorry. I don't. This isn't pasted in here. Is this? I don't. Is it pasted in the chat?
It's that
I'm not seeing it.
people, can you see your chat?
No, let me get out of this.
No.
Hang on.
Sorry.
Yes, okay. Yeah, you're selecting. Right, okay, both of you, that's right. You're selecting specific columns. And if the columns were consecutive, you could use the semicolon for a range, or you do them individually. So that's correct. You've subsetted your first data. And again, a lot of what we're doing tonight is going to feed right into what Christian's going to do next week. So next week you get to do the fun charts, but this week we're just looking at how to make the stuff that we're going to chart later. So this is good. Does anyone does anybody have a question about what we did down here in the chat? I mean, yeah. Yes. Jason, that's a good point. Over here you have a note saying it's case sensitive. Now that, because you saw that was the typo I made. So that's a good idea. Somebody looking at your code who hasn't looked at the data is going to know, okay, this is case sensitive data. That's a good idea. And yeah. And then down here, this is using the a range. So those are two good answers. Does anybody have questions about this? Something to call order mat. Okay. Christian, did you want to elaborate on that rather than me just reading it?
Yeah, I didn't want to confuse folks. I was just going to say that. So in this case, something to keep in mind is the order does matter when you're setting up these pipelines. So you can think of like sort of data flowing through each of these steps, and it's refined at each step. So in this case, if we were to filter after we stripped out some columns, so after we selected some columns, and that column was no longer in our subset, then it would blow up and it wouldn't work. So it's just a heads up. If you encounter an error message and something like, oh, this column doesn't exist, and you're looking at your original data set and you're like, no, it's right here. Something to double check is just the order of the operations that you've listed in your statement.
Thank you. That's a good point. Okay. Do you need the? Yeah, you need the column.
To belabor that a little bit, at each point of the pipe, it is a different data frame. Like Christian's saying, like basically you're taking that interview in, you're piping it into a select, which selects out certain columns. And at that step, that data frame is different. So, and then if you pipe that into a filter and the filter is expecting a column that isn't there, then you'll get an error. So definitely each step is a different data frame.
Okay, if everybody is good with that, we can take a 10-minute break. It's 5:27 and we'll go to 5:37 and then pick up. And one of us will be around if you have any other questions. So get coffee, get water, tea, stand up and stretch. I've been sitting in front of a screen too long.
Hi, I have an odd question. I'm guessing
Yes.
the way filtering works, it creates it is operating off of the interview's data frame. It's not like building off each other. So filter village for Chorizo?
Yeah, I had to guess. Yeah.
Yeah, Chorizo. I could still run that next code where it was filter Carrizo and Ruka because it's still operating off of interviews. It's not thinking, oh, wait a minute, error. You just told me to filter off of Carrizo. There is no such thing as Ruka.
Yeah, the interviews data set still exists. When we ran interviews and we selected, it was creating kind of another view in memory, but it wasn't, say, saved into a subset, and the basic interviews is still exists.
Cool. Thank you for
I
entertaining my naivete.
No, it's a good question. I mean, you can always, but I keep my hang on, let me go back into R for a sec. You can always, you keep interviews in the background, and you can see over here, you can check, check if things are different. The other thing is, you'll notice over here on the side, it'll say, okay, 131 observations to 14 variables. And if you changed it in any way, like we saved one called village info, and this one says, this was 131 observations with 3 variables. So you can see this one over here, village info, is a new subset, and it's different. The data is different, but the interviews that it was operated on, that's still the same. That makes sense? I hope. That's a good question. I think it's good to remember that all these things are not stomping on your original data. Okay. Oh, David, we have Data Science Center stickers, but right now, because most of us are not in the library, I'm working from home, all of us are working from home, we're not in there right now. Are you on campus? Okay, you are on campus. Trying to think how to get some to you, because we are not on campus right now. In fact, I need to get in, but I got to get the N95 mask. So email me on that. I'll try to figure out how to get them to you when someone's around. Okay, I have 5:37. So people are coming back. Okay, I am going to pull up my RStudio, and we're gonna dive into the next some other commands. So hang on here. The next command we're going to look at is mutate. And mutate is say for you can create new columns from existing columns. For example, do math on them. So we're going to have an example here. And I'm not creating any subset. I'm just gonna try this out on the interviews data frame. Okay, so I'm gonna take interviews, and I am going to pipe it into the mutate functions. Again, this is part of tidyr and the tidyverse package. Control Shift M and mutate. The syntax for mutate is mutate, and again, you know, in parens. So I want to create a variable which is, say, the number of members in a family divided by the rooms. Okay, so we're going to see it first. We're going to see how this looks. So and you're going to say, what, you don't have to have a column title, but it kind of makes it more readable if you do. So I'm going to say I want people per room, and that is going to be number of members. Okay, members, which I always misspell. And by the way, even for all my saying, only use this assignment operator, this one actually uses an equal sign. And I apologize if that's kind of confusing, but that's the syntax on this. So number of members divided by rooms. Okay. And I want to slide this. We're going to talk about the output. So let me slide this up a bit. So I am going to run this, Control Enter. Now, if you look down, if you look over here, interviews has 131 observations and 14 variables. That's exactly the way we loaded it in. If you look down here, and again, this kind of, you know, just viewing it like this is a little difficult to read. You have to go down to the bottom, and it says, like, you know, you've got so many more rows, you have 8 more variables out at the side, which are not showing up here. And it also says you have, after you run mutate over here, you have a tibble with 131 rows and 15 variables. So you see, we haven't changed our original, and that's, I mean, that's sort of important to know. So if we think, well, okay, that sounds reasonable, I'm now going to make this into a subset so it's easier to look at. So I'm going to call it people per room, and I'm using the Control Shift M for the oops, wrong thing. I forget the key combination, but I'm going to use the assignment operator, and that's one of those things I got to look up. So I'm going to run this view, and I'm going to save it into people per row. So when we do that, now you see this pops up. If you look on your upper right, pops up, and it has 131 observations and 15 variables. So click on this, and so you can see, go down here, you've added this on the side. Now, it's in this kind of floating point. Now, if you like that, that's fine. You could leave it like that. But let's say you think I really want integers. So I am going to show you how to change that. So we want one of the note down here. Okay, one of the functions you can use is called as dot integer. So I'm gonna nest something, and even though I keep saying it's better to not do nesting, we're gonna nest this one. And the part we're going to change is Okay. And I'm just checking my syntax. Okay, so we're going to do this. We're saying, people per room equals number of members by rooms. And then we're also going to say people per room equals, I'm making this into an integer. And so if you come back over here, oops, and take a look, it's now an integer. Now, so there's a lot of, this wasn't actually part of the lesson. I actually looked that up the other night because, perhaps you don't like those long zeros. So this is a way you can create a subset, and hypothetically you could say, I'm going to, you could, make a chart with that. You could do some visualizations with this. So I'm going to pull up people per room again. And perhaps you might even decide you don't want to, this doesn't need to have all these columns. You can even have less columns. But this is just an example of, there are ways you can create and format the existing columns and then create something new. Now, when in doubt, I've talked a lot about, trying to do the syntax. You could always do question mark, and in this case, mutate, hit enter, control enter, and this will pop up on the side the help information for that particular function. In this case, it says, okay, it's mutate the data or the data frame, comma, whatever you're going to do to it. So you can see that there's different arguments. It tells you what the arguments are. And so there's a, you can get some extra information about syntax if you're unsure about it. So we use mutate to create new columns, maybe, subset your data and make a new column about something, something else. So we're not changing that original data frame, but we're making another one with added information. Another way, okay, I'm going to give you another example of mutate in ways you can, by piping, you can kind of clean up and change the data. Let's say you wanted to remove something where the respondent didn't answer a question. Now, if you've ever used, there's a lot of ways to deal with respondents who didn't answer anything. If you're used to using SPSS, data, other things, they have different ways these are managed. And this is one way to say, pull out all the people who didn't answer. So I'm going to get this one typed out. So we're taking interviews again as our basic data frame. And I am going to pipe that, Control-Shift-M. So I am going to pipe that again into mutate. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to filter this first. I'm going to filter. And okay, whenever you have a exclamation, that's negating. You can say something is, if I want to get everything where it is NA or no answer, I would say is NA and NA member, mem, I always misspell this one, mem, okay, mem association. So let's say this would get everyone who didn't answer, because it is right now, it says I'm filtering for anyone who didn't answer the question at all, but we actually want the people who did answer it. So we want to negate this. And besides R, you're going to run into a negation symbol. It'll be handy to remember this because it's going to run into this in other languages. So I want to say negate the I want to get everyone who did answer the question. In other words, if they did answer the question, it's not no answer. That sounds great. Okay. I hope I made some kind of sense there. And I am going to pipe it yet again. Control-Shift-M. And I am going to now mutate. Mutate people per room. We're going to use that kind of again. And we're gonna say number members divided by rooms. So this is asking the same question as before, but we only want to talk to the people who are in a irrigation membership association. So, oh, see, I've misspelled this thing for the umpteenth time. So down here, it says there's a problem with mutate. The column, or no members does not found because it doesn't exist because I did a typo. So I'm going to go back up here and correct this. No, M-U-R-S. Okay, so let's see what we get. Okay, and here we have 92 by 15 as opposed to 131 by 15. So we have less people because we're only getting the people who are in a membership, irrigation membership association. And again, you can save this if you want to, if you'd like to chart these people, save a subset, and then you can use it yet again. Okay. So are we all kind of, is everybody comfortable with the idea of mutate? Or is anyone not comfortable? Let's negate it. Who is not, anyone not comfortable with mutate? Okay. Until I hear something, I'll keep going. Now, we're going to talk about the summarize function. And I want to distinguish it from something you worked on last week. Now, last week you learned about summary, which is giving you your basic summary statistics. And it looks like summary. Reviews. Okay, that gives you the summary statistics on that. They sound the same, but these are two different things. So what we're going to do, this is more like summarizing things. And so, hang on down here, I'm going to clear this, Control L to clear the terminal. So I'm going to make summary go away because that is a different subject. But that is the way you quickly get some summary statistics, which you'll probably will talk about more when we're doing visualization. So summarize. Okay, so we're going to do interviews. And we're going to do a group by shift. So what this is, village. What I'm doing first, because summary sometimes has little steps in between. In order to, summary summarizes numbers of things. So the first thing I'm going to do is a group by. I'm going to group all the villages, like all the villages by name. Like how many are in Chirozzo, how many in Goad, how many are in Ruaka. We're going to summarize the number of villages we're looking that were surveyed. So first I'm going to do that, and I'm going to pipe that, Control Alt M, and then we're going to summarize. I want to get, I'm picking like the mean. I'm going to get the average of number of members in the association for each group. Okay. And I could even, and this would be a great time to be putting a little comment saying, how many per village. Okay. So I am going to Control Enter to run this. So this tells us, and again, if you wanted to, you could. We're gonna stick for now with the floating point numbers. But so what it is, you have in Chirozzo there are. I don't think you can have a 0.08 member, but we're going to leave this for now. Probably in real life, you would want to round this up. You want to have only integers, but we're just going to go with this for the moment. What's the average? You want the average members of associations by village. So you can see that that's something you can chart that gives you an idea like which village has more members or who's likely. And then you can also match that with other things like how many people per room and different, you can take different statistics and look at what the situation is by village. Okay, so I'm gonna do some more with this. Now we've done, you can pick, now you see over here, mean no members. If you want to, you don't have to stick with this kind of, it's kind of a haphazard name. So you could give this a title and, okay, so we're gonna say, this is the math we're doing on the, this is the summary math, and we're gonna say, let's see, that could be, okay. I'm just saying new title. That's not very imaginative, but I just want to give you an example of how it works. So if you look down below, now it says village new title as opposed to village mean. I could say average number of members. So, you know, you can say, give it a descriptive title. So when someone sees the output, they'll have an idea, what are you trying to show there? What kind of question are you trying to answer about your data? And again, if you want to, you can, you're grouping things and you can do different summaries. Now, Tim and Christian, jump in on me if I don't explain this right. When you're doing these, you have, as you go through these steps, you're creating, you might say internally, under the hood, so to speak, intermediate frames. And let's say you don't want to have a grouped frame. After this, you can actually ungroup it. So I don't, if either, oops, Control Shift M. So I'm, okay, gonna Control Shift M and try not to get confused with my comments. So here, I'm gonna say now ungroup. And see if that looks different. Now, so I'm gonna run that. And this one, to me, they pretty much look alike, but basically you don't, if you're saving this, you don't have these kind of intermediate, data frames that are kind of in the background. Now, Tim or Christian, would you care to elaborate on my probably iffy description?
Yeah, so yeah, this is just a idiosyncrasy you should be aware of. Like when you do a group by object thing, a group by function, what that happens is like it creates those little buckets of little data frames with those groups by village underneath the hood in R. So it's like it changes that object, the data frame, to a grouped data frame. So sometimes you need to ungroup it to do other things to it. And really the only time I know that happens is when I have an error that I can't do something to a group data frame, then I have to go look and say, oh, I have to ungroup it. So it's just a kind of a feature of how dplyr is working here to group that object. And then once it's grouped, you sometimes have to ungroup it to manipulate it further.
Thank you.
And like, yeah, to Jamie, once again, you'll go, why can't I do this?
Yeah.
I was trying to do something simple here after this. And you'll go, oh, wait, I got to ungroup it. But just a pitfall you might run into.
Okay. And again, because of piping, let's say you want to do your group and your summarize, but you want to, again, have all the members who didn't say no answer to the Village Irrigation Association. So I am going to slip in here a filter. And I'm negating the is NA. In other words, is the, okay, this, I hope you can see this. This is NA is a lot, it means there's a missing value. So I'm negating, is this thing a missing value? See if I can type it right this time. Member association, and then go down to the end. Continue. So you can see how it looks over here, and then I'm gonna, the number that you have, and I'm going to run it again, and we'll see how the numbers change. Interesting. They actually went up, not down, but okay. Huh. Now that's strange. It's saying that's kind of a confusing to me, but this is everybody who didn't say no answer. And I would think the number would go down, not up, but I'm going to have to look at that, and I apologize for being fuzzy there. That's interesting. Okay. I am going to have to look at that some more, and then I apologize. You can probably ask me again. We're going to all be here again next week, so I will try to come up with a good explanation of that. Now, one of the things, sometimes you want to sort your data, you want to rearrange it, and the sort function in tidyr is called is arrange. You keep thinking it's sort, it's arrange. So I'm going to take. I'm going to take. I want to save this to see what the whole thing looks like. So this will be, what am I calling this? So I'm going to use the assignment operator, and I'm going to run the whole thing again. And then I'm going to take a look at this. This is member association. So what have I got here? This has got 3 objects and 2 variables. So we're going to, and it tells me that, we have these things here. And if I looked at it, okay, we've got this. Now, let me go back here. So we're going to do something else with this. I want to sort it. And you can also, besides, you can do mean, median, max. You can do all the different types of median, average members. So you could also add in there the minimum members. And I want to take, for the moment, I'm going to take off ungroup. So let's say I want summarize, I'm going to only summarize these. And I'm going to, if I just run it like that, let's see how this looks now. Okay, this is the order it falls into. And so I'm going to run this again, and I'm going to rearrange it. I'm going to use the arrange function. It's not sorted at all. It's actually seems to be it's been listed by village, but I want to have it sorted for the average number of members. So after this, I am going to next, actually, this is small enough. I'm not going to save this all. So let me take this out, and we're going to say Control-Alt-M, and then I'm going to say summarize, or I'm sorry, arrange. And I'm going to arrange it by average number of members. Okay, this is the column that we're going to sort by. Okay, so you can see how it looks here, and here it's actually been sorted by the village. So I'm changing the type of sort, and we're going to see it down here. So here you can see village, the average number of members, and it's now sorted by ascending by how many members, even, yeah. And the default is to sort ascending. If you want to make it descending, so make sure I've got the right syntax there. Okay. Okay. So I want to have it going the other way. So I am going to do a comma after, I pick the thing I'm going to sort it by. And, oh, wait. Oops. I want to get this resorted. What's my code there? Okay. I want to do I'm going to check this. I'm not sure I actually have the right syntax. So I'm going to do question mark and arrange. So this is going to tell me, okay, by group false. So that's that. Okay, here we go. Always sorted. Okay, I have to wrap it in descending. Sorry about that. So, sorry, that's a very poor explanation on my part. So your default is things are always sort of this, ascending order. And it takes extra things to rearrange that, but that at least by you know what to expect with the default, and you can also flip it around if you want to, but this is the way there's different ways you can sort, and you can pick the column. If it's normally going to pick the first column. If you don't want the first column, if you want the fourth column, whatever, you give it the column name, and that's what it's going to sort on. So, okay. Sorry about this. The other one we're gonna, and I want to make sure we've got time to talk about how to output your data. The other thing we're going to look at is count. And count is just like it says, it's counting, it's
Jamie,
counting.
did you want to show them how to change the sort?
Okay, let me do this. Hang on.
Yeah.
DE.
No, it's you wrap it around the actual column name.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry about that. DESC and
there you go.
Okay. So this time you can see down here, this is the sort of generic sending, and you've rearranged it for ascending, or descending, sorry. Yes, I know my right from my left. Okay, so there's different ways you can sort, and again, the thing to remember is you're picking the column that you want to sort on. It can be anything. It can be in the middle, the end, the beginning is the default. That's pick the thing you want to. I was going to say count. So count, we're first of all going to do is get another, it's another function we're going to pipe through. So we're going to say interviews and piping Control Shift M, and I'm going to count. I'm going to count how many villages. So we're going to say that, and that will. Oops, villages not found. Musk data. Let's see. Let's look at here. We should have villages. And let's take a look at this. So interviews. Oh, village. See? Okay. So there is no villages. Let me go back here and fix that. So it lists down here how many villages in these groups that were surveyed. And this is also, in this case, it worked out that the sorting by the first column also, it turns out the number of villages also was ascending, but you can sort, the way you change sort is count, and then villages, you'd say sort equals true. That way, sort true sends it descending. If you don't say anything, it's ascending, and that is, a little quirky, but that is how you get your different counts. And you can let's see, some other things you can do with count. There's, in one of the exercises, they say, go look up the actual instructions are here. So go look up question mark n. And n is kind of an interesting, n is an interesting thing because it's context dependent. If you look down here, we have the village and then the count. N is something that you can, it says gives the current group size. You can't use it by itself, but you can use n with, I wanted to list everything you can use n with. You can use n with specific, no, I got an example here. I want to switch over for a minute to the, Etherpad for a second, because I wanted to show you some examples here. Go down here. Okay. Okay. In the original lesson, the exercise says get information. This is a hint, and I don't really want to do that to you because I think it's confusing. So this is what they call the content, a content dependent expression, meaning it is dependent on, sorry about that. Let's go back to that again. This is dependent on you know, using grouping or summarizing. And this is an example of how it doesn't work. You can't just say count the villages and what's the number of villages. That doesn't work. What you have to do is, like, you're gonna group the villages and then summarize them. And in this case, and I'm gonna go paste this, even though I'm not supposed to cut and paste, I'm gonna go paste this into my R Studio. Oops, I'm supposed to. Okay, so I'm just going to paste this down here to show you. This is a proper use of it. You're saying, I want to group by village, what we were doing, you know, we've done it before. I'm going to, you know, all the villages. I want to summarize the maximum members, and I want to get the village group size. This is where you can actually use AND. So I'm going to run and show you what this looks like. Actually, let me clear this. I'm going to clear the screen, Control L, and then I'm going to run this so you're looking at a nice clean screen. Okay, so what this gives you, first of all, you have the list of villages, and then you know, you're getting the maximum members of this irrigation association. So you get the maximum members for each village, and then you're getting the village group size. So it's giving you some extra numbers, you know, how many members and what's the group size. That wouldn't work without being part of summarizing group by, and that's kind of a strange little quirk. At the same time, it is a very useful, it's a useful extra statistic. And if you do that, this is part of dplyr. If you do this question mark, this help, it will show you that the context is, we're talking about dplyr now, and it'll explain what these context dependent expressions are, which is very helpful. It'll tell you the usage, a little bit of information about this. And when I was going through the lesson, I think just, you know, telling people just go off and run help is a little confusing. So that's why I included some notes in there about what this thing is and where would you use it. I've got one more exercise, but there was one thing I absolutely wanted to show you before we finish up and have some time for questions. So I am going to go straight to how do you write out your data. Now, hang on here, I had my, make sure I hit specific notes. And let's say you've gotten this, you've gotten the perfect subset, and I'm going to pick this people per room. Okay, I'm going to pick people per room. You subsetted your data, and while, as I was saying at the beginning, this particular data set is small enough you can eyeball the whole thing. But say you've got, like, you know, your raw data set's got 1,000 columns and, you know, lots and lots of rows. So you're pulling out a section. So you finally got yourself the perfect subset. So how do you save it to use in something else? And this is how you do this. Okay, you're going to say write CSV, and you're going to choose the data frame you're writing out. And in this case, I'm going to do people per row. Okay, and then I'm going to call the file something, file equals, and it's going to be in quotes. Now, I'm on a Windows system, and I want it to go into I want it to go into data. It could be, you can put it any place you want, like a data output. We should actually use data output because that's not the original data, that's the data you create. So I'm going to say data, oops, data, and output. Then I'm going to call this people per room, CSV. Okay, so I'm going to run that. And so down here it says I've written it. It doesn't give me any errors. I come over here to data output, and I have people per room. So that's, you can actually, you can, again, you can import that one. Let's say, okay, import. I'm going to go import that back. Import from, okay, let's say base. This is a quick example. Where's my data output? So at a later time, you could import in this data, and it would be usable for future projects. On the top, it's saying this is what the CSV looks like, and then below it's showing you, okay, this is the data in columns, and so you can say this is perfect, this is ready to use to visualize, to do other things with. So this is one thing I absolutely want to make sure we cover is how do you output your perfect subset. And it's because, there were others I wanted to, there's a way you can do pivot tables, and I wanted to show you, but I think it might be more important to stop for questions, because I want to make sure you're comfortable where you're at. So when we go to the next session, which is going to be plotting and visualization, you're comfortable with what we did today. So do you have any questions? There aren't any, I want to tell you about pivoting. Now, again, if you're an old admin like myself, you've probably seen Excel pivot tables. Essentially, you're changing the order. And while I was just going to do a demonstration of it, hang on for a second. Pivot tables. And I'm going to do an example here. Whoops, I lost my pivot table. Okay, the idea, if you've never seen them before, the idea of a pivot table is, say, maybe you've got a column of information and you don't want it to be a column. You want to make something where that column of information is going to become a column. Instead of, it'll become titles of column. You're going to switch around. If you like your date, you're going to tilt your data around, and maybe it'll make more sense if I just run this and stop babbling. So I'm going to paste in. So I'm going to call, you can either make interviews wide where you're going to spread out some data, or interview, the other one is interview narrow and interview small. So I'm going to run this. Now, this is what's, take a look. I just want to look again. This is what interviews looks like. One of the things, the original one, it has a respondent wall type, and these are different kinds of buildings. Are they mud bricks? Are they burnt bricks? Are they sun bricks? What are these made of? And we want to get more information about that. So what this is going to do is this is going to take it. We're going to create a new data frame. We're going to take interviews, and interviews is going to pipe into mutate. And we're going to take wall types logical, like they have something. They didn't just leave it empty. You want to have a wall. You want to have some kind of logical yes or no on that. And we're going to pivot wider. The names are going to come. The column names are going to come from the respondent wall type. The values will come from, is it true? Yes or no? So come back here and look at interviews again. Where's our wall types? wall types. So, okay, wall types. So that, you know, they want something where it's, we're going to create true or false information about these wall types, and it'll make more sense when we look at it. So I am going to run this now. And then, okay, I'm gonna, again, this one has the same number of rows, but as you can see over here, it's added variables. So let me open this up and then you can see the difference, okay? So it starts out the same as the other one, okay? You've got member associations, all this, but you come out here and it's saying, is it true or false? Is it mud brick or is it something else? So for this particular record, for this particular village, what was the type of building material? And so these rows have been added. They were, instead of just having, you know, the rows like village, it's changed. Okay, it's changed the respondent wall type from being a row of, you know, rows of brick type to columns, you know, saying, is it burnt bricks, true or false? Is it mud daub, true or false? And it may be, and again, see, so you're kind of flipping it around. Instead of these particular categories being elements of rows, they've now become columns. And to create this new, yeah, this is, we're gonna, I think Kristen talked, we're gonna talk about this more next week, but I wanted to give you an idea of what you can do. And in the, I'm gonna switch back for a moment to the Etherpad, and okay, come down here. Now, for reform, I have a section here. The tidyr functions, you can pivot wider like we just did, you can pivot longer, and a little bit of an explanation of what they are. If you really want to get into it, like pivot wider widens the data, and it, you know, and pivot longer, you get more rows. There's what they call vignettes, and you can actually try an exercise that's built into RStudio about pivoting. There's also over here, this particular link goes to the tidyverse description, because pivoting, I found it convoluted and difficult when I did it in Excel, and it's still kind of convoluted and difficult. On the other hand, I think it's good to know the concept, and even if you don't feel comfortable with it the first time you go through, it is very powerful. And if you have data that you're trying to, you know, work with and visualize, it could come in handy. So I guess we're gonna, Kristen, did you say you're gonna possibly talk a little bit about that next week at the beginning, or just, you know, there's a sample?
Yeah, well, we'll cover an example of it in the beginning of next week, so that's okay. Essentially, it's just a way of transforming your data to make it in a format that may be a little easier to work with. So for example, maybe imagine a data set you have that has one column that is just day of week, and each value is like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, yada, yada. Maybe it would be easier if each day of the week was its own column. So you want to pivot those into columns. And it just depends on your use case. Sometimes that works, and sometimes you want to go the opposite. Maybe somebody gave you the same thing, maybe gave you a data set that has a column for each day of the week, and you're like, this is ridiculous, I just want to squash this into one column. It's easier for me to work with it that way. So you can pivot it back to a single row. So the takeaway is just, it's a way to transform your data.
I'm actually going to try out that vignette, because that might make it a little bit less confusing. So yeah, now, are there any questions here, or anything anybody wants to ask, related, how this would relate to your own data? one thing, if there aren't any questions, I can go. I had some exercises for a second exercise, but it was getting kind of out of time. So what I can do is just kind of go over that one and tell you what I had planned, and you can, just an example of some of these things. I wanted to count the households in the survey that have an average of 2 meals per day. So 3, how many meals per day? So this is where using count. So I, interviews. And I am Control-Shift-M. I'm piping it through count. And number meals. So that gives you an idea of the number of, how many have 2 meals, how many have 3 meals down here. You can see there's that and again, and 2 meals a day, this many villages, 3 meals a day, this many of the this many of the people that were surveyed. So that is one use of count, getting some information like that. And the other one is using the group by and summarize to find the mean, the minimum, the maximum of household members for each village, and then the number of observations. And this is where in the original lesson they say the hint is go see, what is n? But we've talked about n, so I'll just show you the example or what it was going to be. You start off again with interviews, data frame. And we're going to pipe it Control-Shift-M into group by. And the question is villages. So we're going to group it by the villages. Village, one of my famous typos. Then pipe it yet again. Control-Shift-M. And next I'm going to do summarize, not summary. And I want to start with the mean. I'm creating. This is going to be the column title. I'm creating a new title for this. Mean number members. That will equal number members. MEMBR. See, I misspelled that yet again. Comma. Then we're going to do minimum. Min. And max. Numbers equals. And oops, I misspelled that for the umpteenth time. MEMBRS. And we're also going to add this new one, number. That's going to be another column. And so there's the there's summary. And when I run this, let's give ourselves a little space down here. I'm going to do Control-L to clear the screen, and then I'm going to run. Oops. So what do you get? You get your village. You'd say the average number of members, minimum, maximum, and the actual number. And you can nest in there and change this into an integer, but this is used to the basic numbers you can get from them. So you can see just another way, this could, create a report. There's different things you can do with a lot of these, summarizing. So there, so that's 6:27. I almost did this on time. And any questions about this? Okay. Oh, Tim, do we have a survey link?
In the chat.
Okay.
It's at the top of the Etherpad too.
Okay, thank you.
But
And I'm gonna
please, yeah,
stop
there's
the
two
recording.
question feedback form.